Welcome, everyone, to another Social Cafe Interactive. And this is episode 4 of the 13th year. And tonight we are talking about scaling our business, whether you're an entrepreneur or, for that matter, you can be a corporate business. It's not just an entrepreneur. And our favorite people, Gail and Tom, welcome.
Hi.
Um, this could be like several dimensions as far as a discussion on scaling business. There were some excellent answers in the chat tonight. Um, Gail, I'm going to start with any thoughts on scaling a business. Have you had to do it in your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, when we had Reich, it scaled by itself,
Mhm.
because the people we knew, right? So somebody was working with us and they knew someone else that needed us, they would refer them. And one writer tends to know other writers. And so we got more writers. And so it scaled, but I didn't make it scale, right? And because we were using Reich Enterprise, didn't matter when we got over 100 people in there because at that time they weren't charging for collaborators.
Mhm.
Later they did start charging and we had to cut it back to about 20 people. But originally we had an account that you could have only so many admins, but you could have as many collaborators as you wanted. So we had over 100 people in there.
That worked. That was fun. That was the heyday of using
Right. But
Reich.
that was virtual. And so we didn't really have the situation that you would have if you're scaling a business that sells products or even one like a SaaS business that sells services, where if scaling is tricky because if you grow just a little, but you have to go to the next tier of expenses, your income doesn't offset the increased expenses and then you're in
Mm.
trouble, right? Or you don't have enough people to do it, but you don't have enough business to hire another person, right? Luckily, we have lots of freelancers, so you can kind of fix that. But there's
Right.
lots of challenges in scaling. You have to really think about what do you want to do because there's only so much of you to go around, and you have to be good at delegating and not micromanaging. And a lot of people who manage businesses or even entrepreneurs or freelancers are not good at that at all.
Ooh, that sounds like Tom's area on the leadership and all the. Okay, I always get this wrong. 227? No, that's not right. The all the leadership points.
229, but who's
Why do
counting?
I get that wrong? I get it wrong. Okay, 220. I gotta remember add two to whatever I'm thinking. Anyway, but thinking of you when Gail said they're not usually good managers. Is it that micromanaging? Is that is Gail that Gail? Is that what you're thinking as far as that they have a tendency to want to micromanage?
Right. If you're in control of your business, it's your baby.
Mhm.
Delegating and not wanting to impose, right, micromanaging on the person is difficult. And then you have the other opposite problem where you hire someone, you don't pay any attention, and they're not doing the work or they're totally hosing things up, right? Like you tell the VA step by step, this is what I want you to do. And then find out that like 3 weeks in, the VA decided they didn't feel like doing it that way anymore. And they've been doing totally something different. If you're not paying attention, now all of a sudden they did a bunch of stuff not right. And you have to go back and try to fix it. And that takes more of you than you have. And yeah, so you have either problem. You either delegate and don't monitor at all, or you delegate and micromanage so badly that the people want to strangle you.
Tom, what do you think?
Well, I tweeted something similar in the chat tonight about the fact that as you grow, the founder is required to delegate more and more. And the time to document the preferred practices, policies, procedures, whatever you want to call them, is before you grow. And when people come onto the job, they say, okay, this is how this company does things. If you don't do those kinds of things, you don't delegate. I use the word delegating inelegantly can cause great issues. But if you delegate elegantly, then that's all laid out ahead of time. And it's more likely that the processes, procedures, customer service in particular, will follow the pattern of the founder. Whereas if you grow too quickly, you can outpace the ability, as Gail's pointing out, of the people to get into the mode. And the company creates a new character, not one that the founder wanted.
That makes sense. Is that some of like looking at the company culture where it's kind of morphing into something that it wasn't at the beginning?
And rarely is that a increase in culture. Most cultures tend to decline.
In other words, it's like the worst of the. I'm thinking of a term, but it eludes me right now, so I will defer to you guys. Yes.
Yes, things tend to devolve if you don't have clear. Like if you're not really clear, you can't really delegate something unless you can explain step by step how to do it and your expectations. If you don't properly lay out expectations, you're going to have a problem. And a lot of people are bad. Like I had a manager at IBM who kept adding more stuff to do than more than we could possibly ever get done. And I said, look, you need to prioritize this stuff. And his response was, everything is priority one. So our response was, well, in that case, we're not doing anything till you ask for it again. And then we'll know that's important to you. And that worked really well because most of the stuff he asked us to do, he then never wanted it, right? He told us to go do it, but then he never needed it or did anything with it. So we just didn't do it. So he created his own. That's the thing about IBM. In IBM Corporation, things come down from the top, but the field ignores things that don't work, right? We have ways around it. Like we had a rule that you could not carry in your vehicle any part that cost more than $50. And there was a printer head that would break constantly that cost more than $50. But because they broke constantly, you would order one, right? Because you knew that within a week you were going to use it. And you could keep the parts on hand for a week or two before they would look for them. And so you just order it because then you had it, and then you wrote it off, and then you ordered another one. And so you kept one even though officially you didn't keep one. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, that makes sense.
Intelligent employees are going to find a way around stupid directives from the top.
Yeah,
is that in your book?
Gail, you're absolutely correct that people will not follow stupid orders. I'm reminded when I first heard this when I was working at a DOE facility, and one of the statements that the workforce would typically say is, "We can do anything, we just can't do everything." And I actually traced that, found out that the earliest I can find that is at a Army Corps of Engineers base during the Korean War, where they had that posted at their camp, and it just said, we can do anything, we just can't do everything. And I think that's what happens with some managers. And yes, bad managers frequently make bad leaders because of some of the things Gail's talking about right there. That they have no empathy for the workforce. They probably don't even know how to do the job. And so it's important that you allow people to, you hire them for their smarts. So get out of their way and let them do it. One of our presidents said that quote one time. And so the point is simply that you hire good people. And I learned this in growing my business. I tried to do my own first website. And Deborah, go ahead and laugh.
I'm trying not to laugh. No, I'm not laughing at Tom and his website. I promise.
I deserve it.
I promise I'm not.
Me and tech don't get along real well all the time. It eluded me. I'll put it that way. And so when I hired a webmaster, I actually went through a series of them because, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do it. And they couldn't do it. And I was too stupid to know that they couldn't do it up front. And so what I figured out with all of that was that I needed to be smart enough to know, to ask the right questions to get a sense of whether somebody making a promise to me could really keep it. And so that's not needing to know how they do their job, but to build the confidence that they can do their job. And I think that's where some managers get waylaid. They think, oh, well, I got to show you how to do it. And, well, it's easier if I do it myself than to take the time to teach you. Those kind of negative thinking. It's better if you hire good people and turn them loose. Let them do what they do well. And then, as you both have said, the managing of expectations, that's the same thing you got to do with your clients. If you don't manage your clients' expectations, they're going to expect the world from you. And you keep saying, but you didn't pay for the world. I'm not giving you the world because you didn't pay for it. Well, but you promised this and no. Manage those expectations, whether it's employees or clients or whatever it may be. You got to manage expectations.
That's resonating somehow right now, Tom, on some recent conversations we've had the last few days. Like, oh, I need to manage that because otherwise I'm going to go splat.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't listen, right? So I had a client who insisted that I was supposed to be on site in the middle of the night on call-outs within 30 minutes. And I said, the problem with that is I live 35 minutes from here, right? So the only way that could happen is if I slept in the building. So that can't happen. And they kept pushing that. So I went to marketing and I said, what does their contract say? And their contract actually said 24 hours. And if it's critically emergency, it was 1 hour, I think. But the lowest it was 1 hour. But I told him, I says, look, you can want whatever you want. But even if they would write you a contract for that, I cannot magically arrive here faster than I can drive here. Right?
Safely.
It's just,
safely. Not.
Right. You just have to be reasonable about it, right? Well, our other guy gets here in 20 minutes. I says, yeah, because he lives in town and I don't. Right. And at that time, I think they weren't even my account. I was the night shift person who covered third shift, but wasn't working on third shift. I worked second shift. There was no third shift. And we had a few go rounds with that guy because he was like that.
But you're managing expectations. Yeah.
You have to. And sometimes you'll get in trouble for it, but you still have to. Right.
If I may go contractual a bit, because I think it'll be helpful to everybody. Under commercial contracting law, Uniform Commercial Code, the course of dealing and the course of performance are two of the top three priority, order of precedence factors that you consider. And so if you have in your contract that you must respond in an hour, but every single time you're called, you respond in 20 minutes, there creates an expectation that the law will enforce because your course of performance said that you would do it in 20 minutes. And so I always caution people to be careful with those kind of things, because if the contract says an hour, make sure you always state in an invoice or an email, you somehow go on record saying, I am glad we were able to beat our 1 hour contract commitment and be there in 20 minutes. And that way they can't say, oh, but we verbally modified the contract to make it 20 minutes. And when you didn't meet the 20-minute mark, now you're in default of the contract. And I know that may sound like a weird example. There are lawsuits over exactly that kind of thing.
Wow.
And so be very careful with your managing of these expectations, because you can inadvertently modify your contract under the commercial law standards.
By over delivering.
That would be problematic. But fortunately for IBM, clients don't tend to sue over broken contracts because, I found out later a lot of things that, like, I went to Fort Hood and worked on their equipment. I don't know how many times before I found out that their contract actually said that technicians that went there would have secret confidential clearances. Now, I never had a secret clearance. I had a confidential clearance at one time, and I did, I think, when I started going there at the beginning. Later, I gave it back because originally, I didn't know this. In the corporate world, originally, your company could give you a confidential clearance without government checking into you. But above that, you actually got the background check and the interview, your neighbors and your relatives and all kinds of stuff. But so when they wanted to do that, I said, I don't need it anymore. Here you go. You can have it back, because I didn't have any clients that required it. Now, I was back up to a client that required a secret clearance, but I didn't have that. So, and I didn't want to go through that dog and pony show to get it. Right. But they did take precautions, right? They did, like, hide all the data when I was in there working on their equipment. But I didn't know you had to have a secret clearance to go in there. And clients don't know. I got challenged one time at General Dynamics in the back, in the like where they build stuff. A guy challenged me and goes, are you allowed to be back here? And I said, yeah. I said, see this badge? You see that yellow dot? The yellow dot means I can be back here. That's why I had a confidential clearance, was the yellow dot, right? I said, the yellow dot's confidential. That means I can be back there. And he goes, oh, okay, good. And I'm like, well, I could have told him anything. He didn't have a clue.
You just snowed him and just
well, no, that's what I'm saying. The employees are supposed to challenge you, but if they don't tell them what the heck you're supposed to have, anybody can tell them anything. Now, I told him the truth, but anybody could have told him anything.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I got my Q clearance with DOE, which is equal to top secret in the military. And one of the things you sign is that if you even suspect somebody else is disclosing information they shouldn't, you have to speak up. Well, at the Pantex plant in the Panhandle of Texas, we put together and take apart our nuclear arsenal. So there's a fair amount of classified information floating around out there. And I said, when I got the clearance, I said to my boss, I said, well, this is great. Now I know nothing about nuclear bombs, but if I hear something that shouldn't be disclosed, I have to raise my hand and say, oh, and so she called in one of her lead engineers. He gave me the full schematic, the full everything, and taught me all of the different pieces and parts and everything. He says, now, because in the legal role, you never know what you're going to run into. He says, now you're fully briefed. And so you now are on notice. If you hear or see any of this, you've got to speak up. And that was a very enlightening briefing, shall we say.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah, I never learned. I didn't know anything secret, right? I went in, fixed the hardware, and left, pretty much. So, or went in and diagnosed the problem, whether it's hardware, software, network, and left. I didn't actually see any secrets. If I saw any secrets at General Dynamics, I didn't know they were secrets. So, I mean, I might have seen physical things, but, I was focused on fixing the stuff and getting out of there because nobody wanted to hang out at General Dynamics. So,
all I had was celebrities. I worked for Todd Morgan. I don't mind mentioning his name because it's known that I know him, but I'd be working at his house and we'd get done with all the work and we're heading out. And he's like, you mean you don't want to hang around for, Goldie Hawn is coming over in 10 minutes. You don't want to hang around? I said, no, you're having a private dinner with her. Why do I want to? I mean, not that I'm not trying to diss her or be mean or anything like that, but this is your event. I'm just here fixing your computer and that's it. He goes, everybody I know actually will stall what they're doing just so they can meet the celebrity. I said, no, that's not me. I came here to fix your computer. My goal was to fix your computer and get out of here so you could have a nice dinner, because that's what your time is. Your personal time is your personal time. I'm supposed to get in, out, get the service done. And he's like, that's kind of our relation. I don't mean our relationship, but I mean, my husband was there and he always called us the dream team, but that was the basis, because he's like, wow, you actually respect that we have private lives. And I didn't mean to allude to, we're talking couples and, the whole, the whole thing, but it's like, and I'm going to have to bleep that out of the post-production version. But anyway, but it's like, yeah, normal people, normal lives. I'm not going to go blabbing it other than I just blabbed it on Social Cafe, but beyond that. But yeah, secret versus confidential versus, like, you're going to go look at something, Gail, and then go say, yes, I'm going to go build this based on what I saw. No, you're in there doing your job.
Yeah, I don't even know what secrets they had there. All I know is their stuff was ancient, and they tried to get me to go to Desert Storm, I think it was. The guys there said, are you coming to Desert Storm with us? I said, do I look dumb? No. I said, you got equipment that's older than I am. literally, they were still using card punches in the 1990s
Oh my.
and card readers and stuff. I says, I'm not even trained on some of the stuff you have. It's so old. There hasn't been a school since I've been with IBM since 77. And besides, this is what they offered. You had to go, you got paid double, you got a month in Hawaii on vacation, but you had to stay till it was over. I said,
Wait a minute.
I
Stay till it's
remember
over?
Vietnam, and stay till it's over could be a really long time.
Like completely over or just that
Yeah,
tour?
like till whatever the deployment was over. Right. And
Isn't
so of
it?
course they were
Oh,
having some
wow.
difficulty finding someone to volunteer to go. I
Yeah,
said,
I
you
can see
do
that.
realize that everything in this, they had 2 tractor trailer rigs. I said, everything in here could be replaced by a PC and a printer, right? You know that, right?
Had they realized that?
They do. The government knows. They're not dumb. But
Oh.
they were still, they remember the printers with the hydraulic covers that lifted up,
Mm-hmm.
right? They had a printer like that. They had a 3705s, which are so old that was the only one I ever saw in all my career. They still have the disk drives where you could remove the discs.
Mm-hmm.
I think they had
I know what you're talking about.
330s or 40s in there. I mean, it was just like, it's ridiculous, right? I mean, and the mainframe they had was so small that literally a PC could take the place of it. A PC and a printer on somebody's desk could have replaced all the stuff in those 2 trailers.
Now we're talking museum level. We could set up a IBM museum.
Yeah,
If I may interject with a scaling example, because it relates directly to what you're saying, Gail. Andrew Carnegie made his fortune in steel. And one of the things he did when he took over steel mills was he ran them basically 3 shifts, 24/7, because the economies of not having to heat up the ovens, and then let them cool down and then heat them up for the different, one shift a day, was much more efficient, much more effective. And his competition was like, "Oh, you idiot! What do you do? You're going to burn up your machines. They're going to be useless. And so you go ahead and run 3 shifts and see how fast you go out of business." What they didn't realize was by making that much steel and being able to sell it, he made a lot of money. And when the machines burned out, which they did, he bought brand new that worked far better than all the others, his competitors. And so he scaled his business in an interesting way and used that, as Gail was saying about getting updated computers and things like that. Very often in scaling your business, you begin to capture new economies of scale along those lines that may not be immediately obvious as you're starting out.
New economies of scale. I like that.
A lot of it is they just don't want to change. They either don't want to change or they have custom software and they don't want to have to write it again. Frito-Lay was the same way. Frito-Lay and Sherwin-Williams both had 8100 systems in the 1990s, which again could be replaced by a PC and a printer. And it was because whatever their custom software was they were running, they didn't want to convert to a PC. But it was silly, right? When I transferred to Texas, they were so happy. They go, "Oh, now we have 2 people trained on 8140s." This PC equipment that was so old that, right? It wasn't ancient when I got trained on it, but it was ancient by the time I moved to Texas. And so, but neither one of them would upgrade because they had custom software. And they had a bunch of them, right? They had a bunch of offices. They all had the same thing in them. But the maintenance contracts cost more than replacing the equipment, right?
And the software is not that difficult to recode it.
Well, you wouldn't think. I mean, how hard
It's
can
not.
it be?
It's not.
They did it once. They can do it again.
Oh man! And with that, my software is calling me. I know that's worse than the dog ate my homework. But this has been a wonderful conversation, and thank you, Gail. Thank you, Tom, for conversing about scaling businesses. I keep on saying business scaling businesses. And then I want to say, hey, let's talk some more about this, but we could go on and on. next week. I forgot what the topic was. I can't believe that. I came up with 6 months worth of topics, and funding, startup funding is next week. So that's our next topic. Oh, before we go, Gail,
OPM.
other people, yeah, that's good. Gail, tomorrow, Tip Talk.
Yes, we got Tip Talk tomorrow. And the information is always at blog.bizsugar.com/tip talk. And for tomorrow's topic, we have January 24th, training and development for team growth.
You said team growth, right? For a second
Team.
there, I was thinking team growth. I was
Right,
like,
because
well, I have that.
this month's theme is collaborating.
Excellent. Excellent. And that ties in really almost like we sat down and planned this, but it ties in really well with what we're doing in Social Cafe too. So, well, excellent. Thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for joining us and watching. And we'll see you same time, same place next week in Social Cafe Interactive. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.